Hello again. So this is going to be chapter 2 of Abel's Island. If you want to sort of summarize to your family, or maybe just think to yourself, retell what happened in chapter 1. Think about who the characters were and what was the setting, and seemed like we kind of know what the problem might be as it emerged. We remember that readers keep track of the story and retell it to make sure that they understand the important points. Chapter 2. The cave was full of chattering animals who'd been lucky enough to find this haven. I think haven means. There were several mice that Abel and Amanda knew, and a family of toads they had once met at a carnival. All the rest were strangers. A weasel was off by himself in a corner, saying its prayers over and over. Abel and Amanda were welcomed by all, and congratulations passed around. The storm raged as if it had lost its mind completely. The damp occupants of the cave stood close together in the vaulted entrance like actors who had played their parts and could now watch the rest of the show from the wings. The storm was turning into a full-fledged screaming hurricane. Huge trees were bent by furious blasts of wind, branches broke, thunder volleyed, and crazy shafts of lightning zigzagged in the dark, steamy sky. Abel and Amanda stood in the forefront of the group, entranced by the fearsome drama. Amanda craned forward to watch an oak topple, when suddenly the wind tore from her neck the scarf of gauze she was wearing, and this airy web of stuff flew like a ghost from the mouth of the cave. Abel gawked in horror, as if Amanda herself had been rudely snatched away. He dashed out impulsively. To no avail, Amanda tried to stop him. "Abelard!" she screamed. She always used his full name when she thought he was acting foolish. He slid unheeding down the slope of rock. The scarf hooked onto a bramble, from which he retrieved it, but when he tried to climb back with his trophy, the wind walloped and sent him spinning like weightless tumbleweed, his sweetheart's scarf in his paw. Helpless, unable even to struggle, he tucked in his head and was whirled along, shocked and bewildered. It's interesting, something we haven't talked about yet, or maybe we've mentioned a couple of times. I noticed that there have been some metaphors on this page, which is when somebody compares something to something else in order to give you a better idea of it. So here, her scarf flew like a ghost. Why do you think that William Steig wrote it that way? And also he said that he was spinning like weightless tumbleweed. He's not tumbleweed, but it gives you an image of how he is being turned and how sort of helpless he is, right? The scarf. Oh no, heaven knows how far he was hustled in this manner, or how many rocks he caromed off on his way. He did no thinking. He only knew it was dark and windy and wet, and that he was being knocked about in a world that had lost its manners, in a direction, as far as he could tell, not north, south, east, or west, but whatever way the wind had a mind to go, and all he could do was wait and learn what its whims were. Its whim was to fling him against a huge nail, where he fastened with all his strength. The nail was stuck in a fragment of board that had once been part of a large animal's house, and the fragment of board was embedded in a gully full of gravel. Abel clung to the nail and to Amanda's scarf, fighting the wind, whose force seemed to increase when he stopped riding with it. The torrent of wet air tearing past made breathing difficult. Abel stuffed Amanda's scarf into his inner pocket and buried his head under his blazer. Sort of jacket. Nice coat. He soon found himself haunch deep in a swelling stream. Haunches are part of your leg, pretty high up. Rain had filled the gully, and a heavy flow of muddy water loosened his board from its gravel mooring. He went sailing along, spinning this way and that, drilled with 1,000,000,000 bullets of rain. Whatever happened no longer surprised him. It was all as familiar as one's very worst dreams. It was definitely night now. He could see nothing, not his own paw in front of his face, but he knew he was moving swiftly upon his board. Soon he sensed he was in a river. In the immense darkness he could hear only wind, and all around him rain falling into water. A new sound slowly emerged, the murmur of roiling foam. His boat was moving toward it, and it rose to a turbulent roar. Then, with no advance notice, the boat tilted vertically and shot downward on what he was sure was a waterfall. I have to just stop to note, I feel like this author is so good at describing it. I really feel as if I'm there, talking about how the boat was tilted vertically. How scary would that be? I hope you're envisioning it too. There's no pictures, but there's pictures in your head. You're making a movie in your head, as we've talked about. Plunged deep in the water below, he fought against drowning. Then, still hugging his nail, he rose slowly into a maelstrom of churning river, gasping for indrafts of air. Never had he been subjected to such rude treatment. How long could it last? How long, he wondered, could he abide it? As if to answer that question, his craft shot forward again, and he was pitched, jerked, and bandied about by the writhing, charging stream. His boat capsized, then righted itself and began turning over and over. Each time his exasperated head bobbed up, he gasped for his possibly final breath. His fortitude amazed him. What do you think fortitude means? His fortitude's amazing me. Suddenly, thump! He was no longer moving. His craft had struck an unyielding mass and stuck in it. He had no idea in the blackness where in the world he was. It was any wet, windy where. He could feel the heavy water hurrying past him, tugging at his clothes. Drenched, cold, exhausted, he still held on to his nail, but the water pressing him against it allowed him to ease his grip, and it was a relief. The wind still screamed, the rain still pelted, the river still raged, but he felt in some sort of harbor. Momentarily moored, wherever it was, he was able to wonder about Amanda. She was surely safe in the cave, among friends. She would be worrying about him, of course, but he would be getting back to her as soon as he could. This was the weirdest experience of his life. He could never forget it. Never forget it. Never forget. But for the moment he did. Merciful sleep shrouded his senses. He slept curled around the rusty nail, wind and rain drubbing his tired young body. And put an image in your head of some of what you just heard. Little movie in your head. And here's a picture that is illustrating what it might have been like in the waterfall. And that's the end of chapter 2. But what is the problem now? How do you predict he might get out of it? What do you think is the worst part of the situation he's in, and how do you think he's feeling? How have his feelings changed since the beginning of the story?